There were a few more minutes of conversation between us, and then I got up to leave. At the entrance, my father gave me a hug. "It'll work out, son," he encouraged me. "Just don't do anything stupid. I know you probably want revenge on Marissa, and I don't blame you for that. But remember Romans 12 verse 19, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord. You got it. I don't want to have to bail you out of jail. You've got 2 girls to think about," I responded with a smile. I told him, "No problem, Dad, I got it," and he agreed. I re-entered the vehicle and drove back to my house. When it came to one issue, Dad was absolutely correct. I desired to get revenge on Marissa and her lover or lovers. I had loved her without reservation for more than 15 years, and the fact that she had chosen to repay me in this manner was more than upsetting to me. Even though it was only 8:45 in the morning, I knew that next Monday was going to be the worst Monday of my whole life. I had wished Marissa, my wife of 15 years, a good day and kissed her on the cheek earlier that morning. I had also wanted to wish her a happy day. Since the beginning of our marriage, she has been working as a real estate agent, and judging by the commissions and bonuses she receives, she is a damn successful one. "I hope you have a wonderful day," she added in the voice of a fictitious real estate agent that she enjoyed using. Whenever she employed that voice and the artificial persona that went along with it, she was aware that I could not stand it. The fact that she glanced at me with a sneer on her face made the situation even more difficult. As if she were concealing something from me, it was as if she had a secret. As I made my way to the workplace, I took a moment to reflect on the work that had accumulated on my desk. The end of the month, which was coming up in just a couple of weeks, was approaching, and I had several reports that I needed to do before then. When I got at the workplace at 7:45, I placed my briefcase down and went to the men's room to get some coffee. This is something that I do every day. Just then, it dawned on me. While I was standing at the urinal, I had the sensation that someone was pressing a knife through my penis. I was unable to resist doing it. I let out a scream of agony. Alan Randall, who happens to be my immediate supervisor, was using the urinal that was located 2 cubicles away from me. After he had finished his job and buttoned his pants, he came over to check on me after hearing my scream. "It's Greg, what's the matter?" he inquired with apprehension. "I am Greg Watson, just so you know." "Here I am." As I spoke, I uttered, "I feel like I'm on fire." The greenish discharge that was coming from my penis was visible when we peered into the urinal. I had never before experienced such a level of contempt in my entire life. "Greg, I'm okay to go," Alan said. "Come on, you need to get checked out." "I would like to know what the doctor has to say." I complained, "I need to finish all of these reports," and I was right. In response, he responded, "Don't worry about them. I will see to it that they are taken care of. You should focus on taking care of yourself in the meanwhile. In the event that you require a few days off, please let me know. There is a significant amount of sick leave available to you." "Thanks, boss," I said to him. The words "I'm sorry about that." He tried to cheer me up by saying, "Hey, life happens," while wearing a wry smile on his face. After washing my face, I returned to my office and picked up my briefcase. I then went back to my office. I informed the receptionist that I would be absent for the next day, and possibly for a longer period of time, as I was leaving. My regular physician's office was located on the opposite side of town, and I was skeptical that I would be able to make it in to see him today. Despite this, I considered going to see him regardless. As a result, I made the decision to visit the urgent care center that was situated a few blocks away from the office. They proceeded to take samples from me and then requested that I remain seated in the waiting room while they assessed the samples. Despite the fact that it was only a half an hour, it seemed like a lifetime. At last, a nurse emerged from the room and yelled out my name. At that moment, the young lady yelled out, "Greg Watson." When I looked up, I noticed that she was beckoning me to visit her. It seemed as though she was looking at me as if I were a bug. As I stood up to follow her, I couldn't help but wonder why she was doing that. She indicated the observation room with her finger. In a tone that was extremely hostile, she continued, "Mr. Watson, please take a seat." I sat down and observed her as she took my vital signs, including my temperature, blood pressure, and other vitals. She was looking at me once she had finished writing everything down. Before she left the room, she made the statement, "The doctor will be here in a short while." After a few minutes had passed, I became aware of a knock on the door during which an elderly gentleman dressed in a white coat entered. As soon as he recognized me, he entered the room carrying a document and sat down upon entering. What he said was, "Mr. Watson, my name is Dr. Smith. The results of your early tests have been returned, and it would appear that you are suffering from a particularly severe case of gonorrhea." "Do you have gonorrhea?" My question was astonished. "Why is that even a possibility?" "It's a sexually transmitted disease, Mr. Watson," he replied, looking at me as if I were a fool. "Please don't get me wrong. You will be given an antibiotic prescription, and I will advise you to refrain from engaging in sexual activity for a period of 7 days after the treatment has been completed. It is my recommendation that you consult with your primary care physician if the symptoms continue to be present following treatment." He went on to explain that there were other tests that were being conducted at the moment, and it was possible that I would not receive the findings for at least a couple of weeks. After that, he had a desire for a list of everyone I had been with in recent times. Throughout my entire life, I have only ever had a sexually intimate relationship with a single individual. It is my wife. After a brief period of time spent looking at me with a mournful expression, he then turned his attention to my chart. On the other hand, if I were to catch it from her, wouldn't she also experience symptoms? He responded by saying, "Not necessarily, Mr. Watson. Even if she does experience symptoms, she can be mistaking them for an infection of the bladder or the vaginal tract. Her condition needs to be evaluated as quickly as possible. As she waits for a longer period of time, the likelihood of her suffering serious complications increases." The phrase, "Excuse me, Mr. Watson." In addition to compelling me to sign some paperwork, he handed me a packet of tablets. He cautioned, "Take care of yourself, Mr. Watson," before departing from the room. While I was going through the process of checking out, I thought to myself, "That's fantastic." After getting into my vehicle, I called my boss to inform him of the situation. The words, "I'm sorry to hear that, Greg," were spoken by Alan. "This is not a cause for concern. Prudence is my middle name. You are going to take a leave of absence, and when you are cleared, you will return to work. I have already forwarded your reports, so there is no need for you to be concerned about those." My words brought an end to the conversation by saying, "Get well, thank you." Despite the fact that I feared making the next call, I had never concealed anything from my parents, and I had no intention of trying to do so now. After pressing the button for my parents' speed dial, I picked up the phone and heard my father answer it. "What's up, son? How are things going?" so he inquired. "Do you have a job now?" "No, Dad. I need to have a small conversation with you and Mom, if that's okay with you. I have a little problem, and I need to talk to you about it." And he responded, "Of course. How are the children doing?" "To the best of my knowledge," I stated. "I would like to make it clear that I do not wish to discuss this matter over the phone. Now, come on over here." To which he said, "We can talk over a cup of coffee." Following the conclusion of our conversation, I carefully put away my phone before going outdoors. I feel like I ought to provide some background information about my family. Sister of mine. Both Denise and I were raised in a home that was deeply religious. Our house was a really joyful place, full of love and laughter for all who lived there. Our parents had a strong affection for one another, which contributed to our joyful childhood. Nevertheless, we were brought up with a number of restrictions that were rather stringent. The topic of one of them was sexual activity outside of marriage, which, in my parents' opinion, is a major no-no. Before the day I married Marissa, I had never gone all the way with any woman. This is because of the reasons stated above. I did date and play about with other people, but that was the extent of my romantic involvement. It was on that day that I informed Marissa that I wanted to postpone having sexual relations with her until we were married. She greeted me with a big smile and a passionate kiss. Her response was, "That is so adorable. I promise I'll rock your world on our wedding night," and she succeeded in doing so. Never in my life had I experienced anything that was that warm. The fact that I lacked experience did not appear to concern her, and I willingly allowed her to instruct me on how to love her in the manner that she preferred. So much so that I started to look forward to having sex with her, and she appeared to be enjoying it as much as I was. When we got married, I was aware that she was not a virgin, but I didn't mind as long as she remained faithful to me through the entire marriage. During the time that we were happily married, she began working in a sizable real estate firm in the city and was also working toward obtaining her license. Lisa, the first of our 2 daughters, was born to her mother shortly after we had been married for around 1 year. The arrival of Ginger into our lives occurred 1 year after the birth of Lisa. Given that Marissa had a very difficult time giving birth to Ginger, she decided to have her tubes sealed. She told me that she believed that 2 tubes was sufficient for any couple. Her decision was honored by me, and we both continued on with our everyday lives. Although I had hoped for a male, I was more than content with the fact that we had 2 daughters. Naturally, They both became daddy's girls and had me wrapped around their fingers in a very short amount of time for them to do so. In the aftermath of the conclusion of her maternity leave, Marissa went back to work and immediately delved headfirst into her profession. When she was showing houses in the evenings or doing paperwork at the office, I frequently found myself playing the part of Mr. Mom. I sometimes found myself in this position. Honestly, I didn't mind at all. When Marissa was not present, I took great pleasure in taking care of my daughters because I loved them. As the kids grew older, I began to spend even more time with them, accompanying them to the extracurricular activities that they participated in when Marissa was not available to do so. Ginger was more sporty and performed activities like softball or soccer, but Lisa had a passion for music and took lessons on the piano and guitar. However, as time went on, I became aware that Marissa was disappearing more frequently, and it wasn't just in the nights that she was going missing. She was frequently dispatched to seminars located outside of the city, which required her to be absent on weekends. Additionally, the yearly retreats that the company held kept her away for an entire week. It was not enough for her to phone me every night to check in and say hi to the girls, but she did it every single night. In addition to that, she had this false personality that was so obnoxious that it drove me completely insane. Despite the fact that I had multiple conversations with her about it, it was very evident that she was not going to give it up. I was also able to observe that her perspective on work had shifted slightly, and I pondered whether or not she was devoting an excessive amount of time to her job. Despite the fact that even the girls began to see the difference in their mother, I never imagined that she would cheat on me. My feelings toward infidelity are well known to her. At long last, I arrived at the residence of my parents and parked my vehicle in the driveway. When I arrived at the door, my father greeted me with a bear hug and a pat on the shoulder. "The coffee just ran out. Come on in, and we'll sit and talk," he offered in response. My mother and I sat down at the table after I came into the dining room and gave her a hug prior to our arrival. I added some sugar and cream to my cup of coffee, which was poured by my mother. The same thing happened with Dad, and we each had a taste. His father posed the question, "Why don't we begin with a prayer?" Yes, I had become accustomed to it by this point. That is how each and every one of them did it. After the prayer, there was a conversation that followed. Then, after a little period of prayer, we would get down to the proper work of the day. Dad questioned his son, "What's wrong, son?" "I just came from the urgent care clinic. I have gonorrhea," I stated to myself. Dad whispered, "Oh my God," as he did so. I admired him for a number of reasons, and this was one of them. As long as it was the truth, he was willing to acknowledge and accept virtually anything. He inquired, "Were you fooling around?" after a few minutes of awkward silence had passed. "No, Dad, never," I responded to him. "Marissa is the only woman I've ever been with." The man gave a slight nod. "I believe you, son," he stated out loud. "I just wanted to hear it from you." "So, what are you planning to do?" Mother inquired further. "I don't see any other option but to divorce her over this," I stated to myself. She spoke up and stated, "It's going to be difficult for the girls." "Yeah, but they're old enough to understand," I responded to them. "Besides, there's no way I can let it go. Even if she says she won't do it anymore, there's no way I can believe she'll keep her word." "Do you have any idea how long this has been going on?" questioned his father. "No, nothing. I just found out this morning that it's happening with this," I responded to him. Adultery is a valid reason for divorce. I hate that it's happening, but I don't see any other way out. "Hold on a second," he continued as he stood up and went into his office. "I'm sorry that it's happening." I looked at my mother, who appeared to be in utter disbelief about what was taking place. It was with a heavy heart that she expressed her regret to Greg. "I always thought Marissa was a wonderful girl." "Me too, Mom," I responded to her. "I think she fooled us all." Up until that point, Dad had already arrived with his Rolodex. In order to locate the card he was seeking for, he diligently searched through all of the cards. In triumph, he was able to pull it out. "There she is," he murmured. "There she is. You know Gina Hawkins, right?" "Yeah, she goes to our church, right?" I asked with curiosity. "Yeah, she's a family law attorney." "Let me give her a call," he added with enthusiasm. It did not come as a surprise to me that he had her card. Father was a member of the church's deacons, and as a result, he received a number of cards from members of the congregation. Over the course of my observation, he contacted Gina's office, and I was able to hear him conversing with the receptionist, who I later discovered was Gina's secretary. At long last, he was able to establish a connection with her workplace, and I was able to listen to his voice during the chat. "Gina, hi, It's Dan Watson, yes, from the church. We're fine here, thank you. And you? Good. Listen, I was wondering if you could take care of my son sometime soon. He's got a little problem, and I think you might be able to help him out. Really? This afternoon, 12:30? That's great. I'll make sure he gets there. Thank you, Gina. I owe you a lot. Of course, take care of yourself, and give your little one a big hug for us, okay? Bye. That was Gina. She said she had a canceled appointment, and she can see you today at 12:30, he told me after hanging up the phone. She said you need to bring your financials and tax returns for the last 2 years. He then glanced at me. That was Gina. Okay, I responded. I guess I'd better head inside to pack my things. That seems like a good plan, son, remarked the father. You know you're going to have to tell Marissa about the STD. She'll have to get tested too before she spreads it even further than she already has. Maybe the girls should stay with us for a while, the mother suggested. The house will probably get a little uncomfortable with all this going on. You are absolutely correct, answered the father. Maybe they should stay a few days until things settle down. Look, son, why don't you bring the girls after they get home from school? We'll make sure they get to school on time. My response was, I will. Thank you, Dad. There were a few more minutes of conversation between us, and then I got up to leave. At the entrance, my father gave me a hug. It'll work out, son, he encouraged me. Just don't do anything stupid. I know you probably want revenge on Marissa, and I don't blame you for that. But remember Romans 12 verse 19, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. You got it. I don't want to have to bail you out of jail. You've got 2 girls to think about, I responded with a smile. I told him, no problem, Dad, I got it, and he agreed. I re-entered the vehicle and drove back to my house. When it came to one issue, Dad was absolutely correct. I desired to get revenge on Marissa and her lover or lovers. I had loved her without reservation for more than 15 years, and the fact that she had chosen to repay me in this manner was more than upsetting to me. I went home and immediately began searching through my papers in an effort to locate my previous tax returns. In addition to that, I had to search through Marissa's belongings in order to locate her returns. A little over 8 years ago, she expressed her desire to file separate returns, stating that she believed doing so would prevent us from paying more taxes than we were required to pay. Although I agreed with her concept, I did not give it any further consideration. Upon receiving her tax forms, I was able to discover the true reason why she desired to file her taxes separately. It came out that she had received a significant amount more in commissions and bonuses than I had initially thought she had. Having knowledge of the amount of money that she had deposited into a shared bank account, I was curious about the whereabouts of the surplus funds. My investigation led me to discover a folder containing bank statements. It came to my attention that they were from a bank that we did utilize. Upon reviewing the most recent account, I discovered that she had been successful in saving about $1 million over the course of the previous 8 years. How did she intend to proceed? I inquired of myself. Was this her plan to get out of school? Following the departure of the children to attend college, did she intend to depart? The statements, along with her tax papers, were rolled up and placed inside the binder that I had prepared. I had just gotten into my vehicle and was ready to exit it when I heard a beep from my phone, which informed me that I had received a text message. It was a text message from Marissa informing me that she had a late show and that she should not wait for dinner. Yeah, right, I reasoned to myself. I responded with, no problem. I wrote back, I'll see you when you get home. I sent the message, wondering whether she had realized that I hadn't told her that I loved her the way I had intended to. At any rate, I was thinking. My car was parked when I arrived at Gina's office building, and I proceeded to her suite after that. I was greeted by a friendly and lovely blonde receptionist as soon as I came through the door. I'm here to see Gina Hawkins. She stared at her computer for a brief minute before smiling and escorting me into Gina's office. I told her, I have an appointment at 12:30. The handshake was followed by Gina standing up. She smiled and added, it's great to see you, Greg, as she greeted him. Would you like some coffee? Coffee is wonderful, I remarked. You're completely welcome, Gina said. It was the receptionist that she gazed at. Could you bring 2 cups and some butter and nuts? She asked with enthusiasm. The receptionist responded, sure, before departing. When she came back a few minutes later, she brought 2 cups and a number of small capsules that were filled with butter. In response to Gina's motion for me to take a seat, I did so. I was surprised to hear from your father this morning, Gina remarked in response. So, you have a problem that requires my help? Yeah, looks like Marissa's cheating on me, I stated to myself. I'm sorry to hear that, Gina responded. I'm sorry. I thought you two were the real deal. I thought so too, but apparently not. So, why don't you tell me what happened? Answered Gina with curiosity. I informed her about our marriage, which culminated with the visit to the clinic that I made this morning and the collection of bank statements that I discovered today. Gina responded, Well, I understand how you feel, with a smile. Let me explain a little bit about what divorce is in this state. You see, divorce isn't about justice, it's all about money, more specifically how much of it you have and how much of it your wife's lawyer can get from you. Although this is a no-fault state, you can file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, but you have to have very strong evidence. What about the STD she passed on to me? I inquired with curiosity. I agree it sounds very convincing, but her lawyer could easily argue that you got it from another woman, stated Gina in response. You and I both know that's not true, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what the judge will believe. As for the money she put aside, she could easily argue that it was intended as a retirement surprise. You don't believe that for a minute, do you? I asked with curiosity. No, I don't. It looks like an exit strategy to me. She's obviously waiting for the right time to make her move. I'm guessing she's waiting for the girls to finish school so she won't be left holding the bag again. This will be hard to prove in court, so I'm just unlucky then, is that what you're telling me? Not at all, she responded. No, not at all. I have a private detective, and I can get him on the case as early as this afternoon if you'd like. If she's playing, we'll catch her. Do you want to go that route? It could be quite expensive, but at least you'll have evidence we can use in court. I responded with a yeah, let's do it. It was okay, she said. Gather all the information you can, make and model of her car, license plates, that sort of thing. Any idea where she might be? Taking out my phone, I said, hold on a second, and then I continued. I installed a phone finder app when she lost her cell phone a few months ago. Let me see if it still works. I opened the program and conducted a search to determine whether or not it is still functional. A residence on the northern side of town was discovered to be the location of her phone, as stated in the report. I presented Gina with the address, and she decided to jot it down. She picked up the phone and replied, Okay, let me contact my private investigator, acknowledging the situation. During the time that I was waiting, she communicated with her private investigator and sent him an email with the information that I told her. She then turned her attention to me and concluded the conversation. Okay, we're all set. If there's something going on, we'll know soon enough. Now, let's get down to business. I understand you have 2 teenage daughters, is that correct? Yes, Lisa and Ginger. Lisa is 14, and Ginger is 13. Not yet old enough to decide which parent they want to stay with, but getting close. Do you want to seek custody? Yes, I do, I responded to her. Okay, just so you know, the courts usually give primary custody to the mother. It may take a while, but we can try. Who is the primary custodian? She questioned in response. Yeah, since Marissa usually goes out for many evenings, I informed her of this. Just curious, are you 100% sure these are your children? I think so, yes. Does it matter at this point? My name is on the birth certificates. I'm the one who raised them, changed their diapers, I'm the one paying for their care. She said, I understand you, during the conversation. But it would still be nice to know for sure one way or the other. I'll give you the name and address of a lab where you can get a test kit. They usually make them pretty quickly. Okay, I responded. What about your house? Are you buying or renting? Neither, I informed her. The house belonged to my grandparents. After they died, it went into a family trust in my parents' name. They let us live there. Okay, so I won't have to deal with the mortgage. Good, she stated with satisfaction. I'm sure there are things in the house that will need to be divided. Generally, joint assets like bank accounts and stuff are divided 50-50ths. I'll give you a list of what needs to be done when we're done. In response, I inquired, Okay, is there anything else? Right now, she responded. I'll start the paperwork, but let's see what my PI comes up with before we proceed. But fill out the checklist anyway. Do you think I should go and meet her face to face? I asked the question. That's probably not a bad idea, at least let her know she needs to get tested for STDs. That way, you won't be liable in case she spreads the infection further. I responded with, That makes perfect sense. Following the completion of the papers, she presented me with a checklist as well as a card that bore the name of the laboratory. "Anything else?" I asked. "That's all for now?" She said, "Go ahead and deal with it. We'll let you know if and when we get information from the investigator about the fee. You can ask my secretary and Greg." "Yes, don't do anything stupid. We'll get through this. It won't be fun, but it'll get better." I said, "Thanks for your help." She replied, "You're welcome." She said, "We'll be in touch." With those words, I left, wrote a prepayment check, and headed for the lab. After I had obtained the kit, I went to the bank and read the majority of what Gina had written down. After that, I went back to my house. This is probably the place when the majority of men would have sat down and gotten drunk off their butts, obsessing over what happens in a circumstance like this and why it happens. Still, I did not. Yes, it was painful. In my entire life, I have never had such feelings of bitterness and betrayal. Nevertheless, I do not drink, and I never have. Another restriction that I was raised with was that none of my parents drank, and I was not allowed to drink either. When my two angels burst through the door, I did make coffee and sat down at the table with a cup of it when it was ready. However, I did not have time to think about the situation because they were standing there. Typically, they arrived at their residence about this time after taking a ride on the bus, but they did not typically see me when they arrived at their residence. "Daddy, you're home," Lisa remarked to her father. "Are you okay?" The question that Ginger posed was, "Yes, Daddy." "Why are you home so early?" I informed them, "It's been a pretty hectic day," and they agreed. "Look, why don't you two go up and pack enough stuff to last you a couple of days? You'll stay with your grandparents for a while." Inquiring, "Why, Daddy?" Ginger inquired, "What's going on? Is something wrong with Mom? Did you two have a fight?" "Actually, yes, something is wrong, and no, your mom and I didn't fight," I responded to her. I told them, "I'm afraid that might come later," and they were concerned. The question that Lisa posed was, "You caught her cheating, didn't you?" Astonished, I turned my gaze to her. "What was she cognizant of?" I inquired, "What gives you the right to believe that?" As a sign of her humiliation, she lowered her eyes. "I heard her talking to someone on the phone a couple of times," replied Lisa in response. "I couldn't make it out, but she was talking in her fake voice, you know, the one she uses to annoy you." "Yes, I am aware," I responded. "What did you hear?" "Something like 'I can't wait to see you again, love,'" responded Lisa in response. I couldn't hear everything, and she giggled like a little girl, but it didn't sound like a professional call at all. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I know how much you hate gossip," she replied in response. My words were, "It's okay," as I hugged her. "Plus, she's been acting pretty weird lately," stated Lisa in response. While gazing at Ginger, I posed the following question. "It seems as though she does not have the time or the desire to talk to us. Do you feel the same way?" The woman gave a slight nod. "Yeah," she responded. "Like she doesn't want us to bother her or something." At the same moment that I was hugging both of them, I said, "Well, you two can bother me whenever you want. But first, I need to swab both of your cheeks." Ginger opened the test package and inquired, "Cheek swab?" as she did so. "Yes," I responded to her. "My lawyer said I should take a DNA test." The question that Lisa posed was, "You don't think we're really your children?" "Yes," I told her, "but she wants to make sure." "So, you're getting a divorce?" asked Lisa with curiosity. I answered her, "It seems to be the case." In response to Ginger's question, "Is there no way you can forget what she did?" I told her, "I don't think so, at the time. She gave me a little, you might say, a gift. I had to see a doctor this morning." As Lisa said, "Oh shoot," she came dangerously close to uttering a four-letter expletive. "Sorry," she said in a jarring manner. "It's okay, sweetheart. I've had more than one urge to curse today," I informed her of this. "Now, let me take some samples from you." I started by wiping the inside of Lisa's cheek with one of the swabs, and then I moved on to Ginger on the other side. Immediately following the addition of their samples to the kit, I extracted a sample from a cheek and placed it in a different vial. "Okay, you two, go upstairs and get enough to last you for a couple of nights. We need to be here in 15 minutes, and don't forget your homework," I explained to them. When I was putting together the experiment kit, they went to their rooms and started packing up their belongings. After taking the children to their grandparents, I intended to bring the kit back to the laboratory where it had been stored. As I was driving the car, Lisa asked me, "Daddy, if you get divorced, would it be possible for me to stay with you?" Adding, "Yeah, me too," Ginger continued. When asked, "I hope so, girls," I responded. "I'm asking for custody, but you should know that the courts usually give custody to the mother." Lisa asserted, "I do not wish to continue living with her." In addition, Ginger stated, "At this very moment, I despise her for what she did to us." I contemplated telling her that she should not despise her mother, but ultimately choose not to do so. I was expressing the same thing that she was expressing. "I understand how you feel, sweetheart," I responded to you. "Just remember, no matter what happens, I'll always love you, and I'll always be there for you." "I love you too, Daddy," she murmured, flowing tears down her face as she spoke those words. I was already angry at Marissa, but seeing her crying made me much more angry. I had determined to hold her accountable for this. The Lord declares, "Vengeance is mine. I will repay. I will recompense." I was able to hear the words that my father was thinking. At long last, we arrived at the residence of my parents, and I parked my vehicle in the driveway. As I turned to face them, I gave each of them a hug and a kiss, and I assured them that I would call them later. Following the exit of the children from the vehicle, my brothers and I made our way to the porch, where my father was waiting for us. After giving him a hug, the girls went inside the house to get their belongings. Immediately after I gave him a hug, my mother rushed over to greet me. "I'd better get to the lab before it's too late," I said to myself. It was Dad who asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, as far as I can be under the circumstances." "Okay, we'll pray for you. Give us a call and let us know how it went with Marissa," he added with enthusiasm. "I will, but I'm not sure when that will be," I stated to myself. "According to Mom, it's okay, hon, you can call anytime." I greeted her with a hug and then thanked her for her assistance. I better go. Upon returning to my vehicle, I made my way to the laboratory. A half an hour before the establishment was scheduled to close, I arrived and handed my analysis kit over to the receptionist. "How soon will I get the results?" I said with curiosity. "According to her, we should be able to get them to you by the end of the week," she stated with a smile on her face. "That's fantastic, and many thanks," I responded. Following my exit, I made my way towards the residence. During my journey, I made the decision to give Marissa's older sister, Loretta, a call. My Bluetooth earpiece was inserted, and I activated the rapid dial feature on my phone. After the second ring, she responded to the call. "Hey Greg, how's my favorite brother-in-law doing?" she asked with curiosity. "I've had better," I claimed. "I have a question for you, if you have a minute." "Of course," she responded. "Have you talked to Marissa lately?" "Not since we were at your place last month," she responded to me. "Everything okay?" My response was, "No, it's not." I lay out the Reader's Digest version of what was going on, and she listened and remained silent the entire time. "My God," she exclaimed. "I hate to say it, Greg, but it looks like she's back to her old habits." "Old habits? What do you mean?" I inquired by asking. "She was pretty wild when she was young, went through guys like most people go through socks, cheated on just about every guy she dated. She was like that for most of high school and college. After she met you, she calmed down, and I thought she was over it all. She told me she met her soulmate and wouldn't play the field anymore, so I didn't say anything to you." "I'm sorry, I probably should have told you." "No, it's not okay," I responded. "It's not your fault. I understand. You planned to kick her out tonight and wanted to see if she could stay here with us, actually." "Yes," I responded to her. I was able to hear her sigh over the phone as she said, "If that's okay with you." "I think she might stay here for a while, at least until she gets a grip on herself," she remarked in response. "Frank won't be too happy about it though. I don't want it to cause you problems." "It's okay, he'll deal with her, just so long as she doesn't stay here too long." "Okay, thanks, I appreciate that. I don't know when she'll be home tonight, but I'll call you when she leaves." "Thank you," she expressed her gratitude. "How did the girls take it?" "They're not happy, but they're doing better than I thought they would. You've raised a couple of good young women, Greg. You have to be strong for them," she stated in response. "I'm trying," I murmured to myself. "Well, I should get going. I still have to make dinner. Call me later, okay?" "I will," I told her before we reached the conclusion of our chat. As soon as I arrived home, I made the decision to prepare some leftover meatloaf for dinner. It was soon after I had finished watching the evening news that I received a call on my phone. I answered the phone after noticing that it was Gina who had called me. "Hi, Greg," she remarked when I responded to her. After taking a peek at my watch, I noticed that it was slightly more than 6:30. "Hey," I urged her. Working late tonight for you? Yes, she responded. I just got some preliminary information from a private investigator. It seems your wife was a very busy girl. She's been with 3 men since 1 o'clock this afternoon. Wow, my thoughts were. 3 men in one day? When does she even have time to work, really? Yes, she responded. Anyway, I'm forwarding the information to your email, photos, video, and a summary of the report. I'd recommend you don't watch the video, but you should listen to the last few minutes. Pretty enlightening stuff. So, do you now have enough evidence for a divorce? Oh yeah, I responded to her. Call me when you're done listening to the audio recording, okay? I responded with, okay, thank you, Gina. Immediately after we had finished our conversation, I turned on my laptop and checked my email. After opening the movie, I increased the volume to the level that Gina had recommended in her email communication. Although I had no interest in watching the film of her engaging in sexual activity, I was interested in hearing what she had to say about it. I see you're married, he said, pointing to her rings. Congratulations. It was for the moment, she said. Taking a quick glance at his ring, she continued, I also noticed that you are married. Yes, my wife and I have an open marriage, he stated to reporters. And you? It's not an open marriage like yours, but I allow liberties when they arise, she stated in response. That means your hubby is unaware of it, so he inquired. She corrected him by saying, no, he does not. He has no idea what kind of woman he is married to at this point. I'm going to guess that he's lying, I thought to myself. What's the matter? Isn't he doing well at home? He inquired of the man. He'd better, for I have taught him everything he knows, she informed him of this. Did you instruct him? Astonished, the guy inquired. Did he have a virginal status at the time of your marriage? Believe it or not, he was, she added. Imagine a 23-year-old woman who has never been pregnant. He is a religious fanatic who abstains from smoking and consumes no alcohol. To hell with it, he doesn't even use profanity. In the event if I sat next to him, he would most likely go on a bench. He didn't even know how to have sex till we were married, the man claimed. He sounds like a loser, the man remarked. Then why do you continue to be with him? Is he someone you love? In a way. Other than that, he is a complete and utter boring, she added. I guess, at least a little bit, he is a wonderful father to my daughters. He takes good care of them, and he doesn't fuss when I arrive home late. He inquired, the girls are his, and lied. She gave a shrug. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe, honestly, I don't care. He thinks they're his, and that's the main thing, she replied in response. How long have you been fiddling with him, if you don't mind me asking? He asked with curiosity. She responded, I don't mind, hell, I've been having fun my whole married life, and he still didn't get it. No, he has no idea. He's never been with another woman, so he won't even know the difference, she stated in response. It was at that precise moment that I had to suppress a fit of gagging. The idea that she had been treating me in this manner during the entirety of our marriage made me feel sick to my stomach. It was he who inquired, do you intend to remain with him? Yeah, for now at least. Until the girls graduate high school and go off to college, she explained to me. That's about 4 or 5 years from now. I'll have everything ready to run away by then. His question was, why wait? Because the courts usually give custody to the mother, and the last thing I want to do is end up with 2 teenage girls in my arms, she explained to reporters. What do you plan to do after this? I plan to celebrate. Maybe have fun with a few people at once. Maybe I'll go on a cruise or retire to Costa Rica or something. I don't know, she stated in response. Oh, I've got a couple of guys. Do you think you can get away for the weekend? He asked for clarification. Sure, she responded. I can tell Greg I have a mandatory weekend seminar or something. He'll believe anything I tell him. Let me know when you can get out, and we'll set it up. You have my number. I will, she answered with a grin on her face. He gave his watch a quick peek. It's getting late, and it's time for me to leave. I look forward to seeing you again, sweetheart. In her own words, I am looking forward to it with all my heart. There was a wide grin on Marissa's face as she sat down on the bed after he had left the room. Oh, Greg, she uttered to the room filled with silence. You have no idea what's in store for you. After the video was over, I brushed away the tears that were now falling down my face and then continued recording. It hadn't occurred to me that she was so enraged. I let out a sigh and then phoned Gina's number. I just finished with the video, I said to myself. You were right, it was enlightening. She posed the question, "So, how would you like me to proceed?" "Burn it to the ground," I ordered in a commanding tone. She said, "Consider it done," and I agreed. "What about all those guys she was with?" I inquired with curiosity. "Can we go after them too?" "I'm afraid not," she responded. "Alienation of affection lawsuits are no longer allowed in this state." "Don't worry about it. I have a feeling things aren't going to go well for them when their wives catch on." "Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord," I whispered quietly, echoing what my father had instructed me to do earlier in the evening. Gina let out a giggling sound. She said, "Well, I have to go," and she left. "I'll prepare the papers and hand them in this week. If she wants to run away, we'll set it up for her, only it won't be the way she wanted it." "Thanks, Gina." "I owe you one," I responded to her. "I'd love to just take good care of your girls," she replied with enthusiasm. After our conversation was over, I put my head back on the couch and lay back, tears flowing down my face. When I thought about the fact that I had provided Marissa with the best 15 years of my life, it hurt my heart. Another buzzing sound came from my phone a few minutes later. I received a phone call from Marissa. "Hi," I answered in response to the question. "Hey, Greg," she greeted him. "Are you okay?" "That doesn't sound good." "As I was saying, it's been a bad day." "What's going on?" "I'm finishing up work." "I think I made another sale," she stated in response. "Okay," I responded in a tone that was not offensive. "I'll be leaving soon, so I'll be home in half an hour." "Okay, yes, of course," I told her. "Okay, I'll see you when I get home." "Love you," she said in her phony voice. "I'll see you sometime soon." "Me too," I answered, ending the conversation. I wondered whether she noticed that I hadn't told her I loved her, and then I realized I didn't care if she noticed or not. I took the 4 photographs, printed them out, and then placed them all on a single piece of paper before placing them in an envelope. I meant to confront her tonight when she got home. Following the preparation of a cup of coffee and the placement of all of my belongings on the kitchen table, I sat down to wait for Marissa to return home. I waited and waited. After an hour, she still hadn't shown up, but I figured she was probably lingering somewhere, so I kept waiting. 2 hours later, she still hadn't turned up, and I was becoming nervous. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message and sent her a text, but got no answer. 3 hours later, there was still nothing. I started to wonder if she had been in an accident. I received a call on my home phone almost 3.5 hours after the start of the call. Although I picked up the phone in the hopes that it was her, it was not her. I picked up the phone and replied, "Greg Watson," as I did so. "Mr. Watson, this is Angela Barnes from Mercy Hospital." "Are you related to Marissa Watson?" she inquired with curiosity. "She's my wife," I introduced her as. "Really not for long, Mr. Watson. Your wife was in an accident and has been brought here for treatment." "Can you come as soon as possible?" she asked for clarification. "Yeah," I responded to her. "Is she okay?" "What happened?" "I'm sorry, sir, I can't give you that information," Angela responded in response. "Her doctor would like to speak with you when you get here. Just ask to be called to the courtesy desk, and they'll take care of you." "Thank you," I expressed my gratitude. I was left wondering what had transpired after she abruptly ended the chat. The paper that contained the images was placed inside of an envelope, and I slid it into the pocket of my jacket. The idea of calling either Dad or Loretta crossed my mind, but I ultimately chose to hold off until I had more information. When I got in the car, I immediately started driving. When I arrived at the hospital, I went inside and proceeded to the courtesy desk as I approached it. The woman who was working behind the counter was of middle age, and I introduced myself to her and gave her the name of my wife as a patient. Turning her attention to the other woman sitting next to her, she checked Marissa's status on the computer. "Would you please escort Mr. Watson to the ICU?" she asked her companion. "Sure," the other woman remarked as she stared at me. "I take it." She stepped around the desk and signaled for me to follow her, which I did immediately after she'd done so. We went up to the intensive care unit, where I was greeted by a law enforcement officer in uniform. "Mr. Watson?" he inquired. I remarked, "That's me," in response. "I'm Officer Simpson. I'm the one who responded to the report of your wife's accident," he explained to reporters. The question that I posed was, "What's wrong?" "She was driving through the intersection of 3rd and Main when she was hit by a truck. The other driver was drunk, ran a red light, and hit her car on the driver's side," according to his explanation. What he said was, "I am truly sorry." "It's okay," I said to her. He handed me a business card from the tow truck company and stated her car was taken to the junkyard. There is not much left of it. He was referring to our conversation. If there is anything I can do to assist you, please give me a call. Thank you, officer, I responded as I pulled out his business card. An individual dressed in a white medical coat approached me after he had left, and he inquired, Greg Watson? Yeah, was my response. I'm Dr. Blake. I'm the doctor in charge of your wife's treatment. Can we talk for a moment, please? Sure, I responded enthusiastically. After guiding me into a little room, he shut the door behind him and sat down on a chair in front of a round table that was also rather small. I took the seat just across from him in the other chair. The question that I posed was, how is my wife doing? She has several broken bones and quite a lot of internal injuries. She also took a severe blow to the head. We've put her in a medically induced coma to help her recover, but there's more. Did you know your wife is Garia? He asked with curiosity. Yes, I learned that firsthand this morning, I stated to myself. And I take it you're being treated for that? He questioned with curiosity. Yes, was my response. Good, but that's not all. Our initial tests indicate that she may be HIV positive. We've sent her blood for a full blood test, but it will take a few days if not weeks to get the results. Have you been tested for HIV? Not that I know of, I responded to him. They drew blood when I went to urgent care this morning, but I don't know if they checked it. I suggest you see your primary care physician as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be a good time. The sooner you take the test, the better. If either or both of you test positive, you should discuss this with your doctor. In general, if you practice safe sex and take your medication, you should be able to have a fairly normal sex life, he further explained. It is dependent on her, I commented. It could take anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks, depending on how quickly she heals. She could be here for a while after that. Can I see her now? I said with curiosity. Of course, he responded. A grin appeared on my face as I thought to myself, she could really use your support right now. After rising to his feet, he opened the door. In addition, he pointed to the door of her room and said, she's in room 5 over there. As I shook his hand, I expressed my gratitude to the physician. As I entered her room, I turned my attention to her person. A cast was placed on one of her legs, and it extended all the way up to her hip. She was fully covered in bandages. There were a few cuts on her face that had been sewn up, and her face was black and blue. Her appearance suggested that she had been through a conflict zone. After saying a prayer for her, I took off the ring that she was wearing. I removed the envelope that contained the photographs and penned her name on the front of the envelope. After that, I inserted my ring into the envelope and then I sealed it. I turned my attention to the nurse who was attending to her conditions. Could you make sure she gets this when she wakes up? I said with curiosity. Of course, the nurse responded. She continued by saying, go put it on the tray over there, drawing attention to a wheeled tray that was empty. I said, thank you, as I positioned it on the tray so that Marissa could make out the words. A final glance was taken at the woman who was lying on the bed. Despite the fact that I could not stand what she had done, I did not want to see her in this state. As soon as I noticed that she was still wearing her rings, I removed them and placed them in my pocket at that moment. I whispered, goodbye, Marissa, as I walked away. As I was leaving the room, the nurse gave me a jovial glance and said, I'll see you later. While I was on my way home from the hospital, I called Loretta to bring her up to speed on the situation. She was taken aback when I informed her of what had transpired and what the physician had shared with me. Greg, you know that Frank won't let her stay here if she's HIV positive, she remarked. I know it will be safe, but he won't want her around the kids. I can't go against him on this issue. Her parents retired a few years ago and moved to Florida, so that was out of the question. Then I guess I'll have to find her an apartment, I explained to him. According to her, I believe that it is for the best. I'm sorry, Greg, but I'm not going to put her above my family. She made her bed, let her lie in it. I don't care when you find something. I'll help you move her stuff, but then I'll wash my hands of it. I understand, I responded to him. I don't blame you. It's getting late, and it's time for bed, but keep me posted, Greg, she replied with conviction. Thank you, I let her know. Upon my arrival at my residence, it was almost midnight. Having reached the point of exhaustion, I stripped down to my underwear and threw myself into bed, falling asleep practically as soon as my head touched the pillow. I made a call to the doctor's office the following morning after I woke up in order to schedule an appointment for the same day. When they informed me that they had a meeting scheduled for later that morning, I was a little taken aback by the news. The next thing I did was give my parents a call and explain what had taken place. They expressed their dismay at the news of the accident and the possibility that she was HIV positive, yet they assured them that they would transport the girl to the hospital if they desired to see her. The proof that had been presented to me was another thing that I discussed with them. It was Dad's request that I send them to his particular email address. I told him, "It's really bad," and he agreed. "Don't worry about it, son," he assured me. "I'm a big boy now." I called Gina to tell her the news after I had forwarded the letter to her. It was shocking to her as well, but she stated that it would allow her more time to complete the divorce paperwork. After that, I called Marissa's office to let them know about the accident she incurred. In addition to expressing their sympathies to me, they assured me that they will see her in the future. The subsequent 2 weeks were filled with a lot of activity. Marissa's portion of the cost allowed me to choose a 2-bedroom apartment on the ground floor with an attached garage, put down a deposit, and pay 2 months' worth of rent in advance. All of these things have been accomplished. As soon as the girls and Loretta arrived, they assisted in packing all of Marissa's belongings, which included our wedding album, and then we took them to the apartment location. Along with that, I received the report from the DNA lab, and I was relieved to learn that both of the daughters were, in fact, mine. When I saw that, I couldn't help but wear a grin. On the occasion of my meeting with the insurance adjuster, he examined Marissa's vehicle. The accident had left me wondering how she had managed to survive it. I couldn't help but wonder. Exactly the same thing was told by the insurance representative. In the event that the vehicle was involved in an accident, she would be entitled to a check because both the vehicle and the insurance policy were in her name. Her belongings were removed from the vehicle, and I brought them to her apartment. The question that my mother asked me 1 week after the accident was, "Did you stop by Marissa's?" "No, I haven't," I responded to him, "at least not since that first day." "Why?" "I was just wondering," she answered. "The reason is? She's made it clear that she doesn't care about any of us and she wants to run away." "I'm giving her what she wants, just not on her schedule," I responded to her. Going to the doctor was the first thing I did 2 weeks after that fateful Monday. Although I had recovered from the gonorrhea that Marissa had infected me with, the physician was still waiting to determine whether or not she had infected me with something more serious. I was nearly completely free of the ache in my groin, but the emotional anguish that I was experiencing in my heart would take a very long time to heal. During my phone chat to Alan, I informed him that I would be returning to work the next day, which made him very, very happy. I received a phone call from the hospital on the same day, notifying me that Marissa had at long last emerged from the induced coma she had been maintaining. After receiving a call from the nurse, she informed me that they were doing examinations and tests on her, and she advised that I visit her later that evening. I had no problem with that at all. When I called Gina, I informed her of the situation. We were both waiting for Marissa to wake up so that she could be served with the divorce papers that she had filed with the court prior to our arrival. I was taken to the hospital in the afternoon, when she made arrangements for the bailiff to meet me. The following person I called was Loretta, and she agreed to meet me in her room that day. Although I informed the girls that their mother was awake, they simply shrugged their shoulders and said, "Never mind. I'm going to meet her this afternoon. Would you like to come with me?" I put forward the question. Lisa said, "No thanks, Dad," to her father. "I'm too mad at her right now." "Me too," Ginger responded. "Besides, I have a lot of homework to do." "Okay then, I'll take you to your grandparents when I leave," I stated to myself. Although I was aware that it would be more difficult for them than it was for me, I did not want to coerce them into seeing their mother if they did not wish to do so. After driving them to the residence of their parents at approximately 4:30, I informed them that Marissa was awake and that I would meet Loretta and the bailiff at their residence. "Let us know how it went, son," it was said by the father. "I will," I responded. "I'll come back for the girls when I'm done." "Good, then you can have some of Mom's lasagna when you get here," he added with a smile. "It's going to be delicious." My mother's lasagna was nothing short of legendary, and eating it was sure to put a smile on my face. "That sounds like a good idea," I commented before I left. From the moment I arrived at the medical facility, I made my way to the room where Marissa was receiving medical attention. While I was standing outside the nurse's station, I spotted Loretta having a conversation with the doctor. I also noticed a man wearing a brown jacket and holding a manila package not too far away from her. Without a doubt, this belonged to the bailiff. I went to the nurse's station and had a conversation with the physician over there. I said, "How is she doing?" "She's conscious, and her vital signs are normal," he explained to reporters. "The antibiotics we gave her did their job, and we're just monitoring the situation. She seems to be recovering well." However, I want to keep her here for another week, but I think she can go home after that. Okay, I responded. Is she allowed to have visitors? He responded, yes, but not for way too much longer. I'm not going to be here for very long, I assured him. He showed his comprehension by nodding his head. As Loretta and I made our way into her room, the person who was serving the process joined us. As we entered, Marissa looked towards the sky. I noticed that she had opened the envelope that I had left behind on the very first day that I was here. Loretta whispered, "Hi, Greg," as she introduced us. I responded by saying, "Marissa," and Loretta remained silent. Marissa glanced at me with a sad expression before she answered. "I take it you all found out," she continued, pointing to the packet of information. "Yes." I responded to her by asking, "So, were you following me or something?" "What clues did you have?" I responded to her question by saying, "You passed your illness on to me. That's how I found out about it." "And you are correct, I did follow you after that." I looked at the bailiff and nodded my head before he spoke. He looked to Marissa and asked, "Are you Marissa Watson?" I looked at the bailiff and nodded my head. When he spoke, he looked at Marissa. "You've been served," he said before leaving the room. "You couldn't even wait until I was out of the hospital to serve me," he said. "Yes," she responded gently. He handed her the envelope and took a picture of it. "You've been served." In response to Marissa's inquiry, I responded, "No, you were the one who wanted to flee to safety. I have recently moved your calendar forward by a few years." "Are the females aware of this movement?" After hearing my remark, she inquired. "Yes, they are," and I responded by saying, "And they don't like you too much right now. Because of this, they are not present. At the same time, you do not need to be concerned about being led with them. The request I have is for complete custody. In the event that they wish to see you, I will allow you liberal visitation privileges. However, at the moment, they do not wish to interact with you in any way." She glanced at me, horrified that I had used her own words against her. "And I understand you hate me too," she said. "Hate is a pretty strong word," I answered. "Let's just say I don't think very highly of you anymore." She shook her head and asked, "Do you think you can forgive me?" I was surprised that she had used her own language against me. She inquired, "Perhaps there will come a time when I will be able to look at my daughters and not see the pain and suffering that is on their faces, pain and suffering that you are responsible for. By the way, you should know that I am the owner of the girls. A DNA test was performed on them." My response was, "Doctor, that is not going to happen." He responded, "I see." I then asked, "How long will she be in a coma?" I inquired, "When I'm finally freed, where do I plan to go?" Her question was, "I rented an apartment for you," she said. When I told Marissa that, "Loretta has agreed to take you there when you get out," I said. "All of your belongings have already been moved, and the utilities are in your name," I said, pulling out an envelope and holding it out to her. "This is your half of our joint bills, minus the deposit and 2 months' rent on the apartment." Marissa looked at her older sister. "Your car was totaled, so you will also receive a check for that." She accepted the envelope and shook her head. "By the way, I am also aware of your little bit of an emergency fund. My attorney has placed a freeze on that account. If you sign the documents, she'll release the funds, minus my part, of course," I said. She looked at me, shocked that I had discovered her nest egg. "I'll fight you for it," she said. "I don't think that would be very prudent," I told her. "Unless, of course, you want the proof I have to go public." My statement that they are rather graphic was met with a deflating response from her. "Have your attorney look over the documents. Given the circumstances, I have no doubt that you will find them to be as fair as you possibly can. Then sign them, and we can get this sham marriage over with." Marissa stared at Loretta, hoping that her sister would intervene on her behalf. However, she did not. "You stupid," Loretta snarled. "I warned you years ago that you'd burn if you didn't pull yourself together." Marissa's sister did not intervene. "Not only did you lie to your spouse and children, but you also lied to me when you said that you would put all of that situation in the past. When you got out of the car, I promised Greg that I would take you back to your apartment, but that's all I'll do. Following that, I will no longer interact with you." What? I was aware of how close they were, and I was also that my elder sister was going through a difficult time. "You heard me, you stupid, lying," Loretta shouted. "After I take you to your apartment, I never want to see you again until you clean yourself up." Marissa inquired, tears flowing down her face. I understood how close they were. "Are you able to hear me?" "I'm so sorry," Marissa screamed out while nodding her head. "That and a $5 bill can buy a cup of coffee," Loretta replied. "I'm serious. Marissa was crying when she nodded her head. No matter how hard you try, I will not allow you to come near my family until you get your head out of your neck. And start by apologizing to your husband and your girls. With tears in her eyes, Marissa looked at me. I'm so sorry, Greg, she said. I know you don't believe me, but I love you. You're right, I don't believe you, I said. Sign the papers, Marissa, and this, now. She nodded her head, saying nothing. Goodbye, Marissa, I started to leave, but she spoke before I got to the door. Can I call the girls, Greg, please, she asked. You can call any time you want, I told her. But I can't guarantee they'll talk to you. I understand, she said quietly. Thank you for that, at least. You're welcome, I said and turned away from her. As I walked across the room, I could see the unpleasant looks from the nurses. No doubt they disapproved of me handing her the divorce papers at the hospital. Too bad, I thought. I drove to my parents' house and drowned my sorrow in a huge portion of my mom's lasagna. Epilogue, the divorce went smoothly. 3 months later, I was a free man, and not just in one sense. Not only was I free of Marissa, but I learned that I had dodged a bullet and was HIV negative. Oddly enough, Marissa's tests came back negative as well. I didn't need all of it, so I put it into 2 accounts for the girls' college education. Life went on for the 3 of us. Lisa and Ginger were my primary reasons for living these days. Sure, there were times when things were a bit of a stretch. Being a single father with 2 teenage girls is not easy, but I managed to get through it with the assistance and guidance of my mother. Gina handed me a check for a little more than $450,000, which was half of the money that Marissa had kept in her secret account. I hadn't followed Marissa, but the girls told me she was adjusting to her new life as a single divorced woman. Yes, they finally talked to their mother, and she apologized to them. It was almost a year before the girls warmed up enough to spend even an afternoon with their mother. She bought a new car and went back to selling houses, but with a different company. Somehow, her antics became known, and the management was not too happy about what they found out. She was offered either resignation or dismissal. She chose the former and took a job at another company, where the girls told me she was doing well, and they said she had finally given up her false identity. As for me, I have found that there are several single ladies in the church claiming my attention. I found myself being pelted with various dishes to take home, pies, casseroles, even lasagna from time to time. And it seemed that my girls were eagerly waiting for me to get attached to someone again. Come on, Dad, you need to get out there and start dating again, Lisa told me. It's not good for you to be alone. My response was, I wouldn't even know where to start, and I added, and I'm not alone. You two keep me more than occupied. However, we shall not remain in this location indefinitely. Ginger explained to her father, it's easy. All you have to do is approach a woman and ask her to join you for dinner. You are able to accomplish it, right? When I glanced at my youngest daughter, I couldn't help but wonder when she would become an expert on dating. I guess I could give it a try, I said. That Wednesday evening, I was waiting in line at the coffee shop at our church when I came across Rhonda Carson. She had lost her husband in Iraq a few years previously and was raising her daughter, who was 17 years old, by herself. She was one of the people who gave me a casserole to take home for supper. Hello, Rhonda, and how are you doing today? I inquired. She said, Greg, you are doing well as you hang in there. How about you? I'm fine, and I really enjoyed the casserole you gave me last week. I said, thank you. Do you handle raising your girls alone? She asked. It's a little difficult sometimes, but yeah, I manage, she laughed. Well, if you're managing, then you're pretty good at it, I guess, she said. How are you doing? You have a teenage daughter too? I said, the hardest part is trying to handle everything alone. I can understand that, she said. We grabbed coffee and sat at a table, talking about the difficulties of single parenthood. When I decided to step up, I said, look Rhonda, I'm totally new to this whole dating thing, but would you like to have dinner with me sometime, maybe this Friday? I asked. She thought for a moment, smiled, and nodded her head. Yes, Greg, I'd like that, she said. What do you mean? I asked. I'd like to try the new Texas Roadhouse restaurant. Do you like it? I'd love a steak, she said. Sure, that sounds tempting. Maybe we can go to a movie or something later, I said. Great, she replied. I can pick you up at 6:30 if that's okay with you. That sounds wonderful, she said. In fact, you can bring the girls, and they can stay with Linda, if that's okay with you. They had known each other for a long time and were already friends, so I thought it would be a good idea. Sounds good to me, I said. The girls were excited about my date with Rhonda, and they liked the idea of spending the evening with Linda, so it was all set. That Friday, I invited the girls over, and we went out to dinner. Rhonda looked really cute in her denim skirt, and we had a great time. We didn't have sex that night, but she gave me a hot kiss when I stopped in front of her house. I noticed 3 sets of eyes watching us from the window of her house, and I thought I saw them giving each other high fives. That was the best night I've had in months, Rhonda said as I hugged her. Same here, I said. What if we do it again sometime soon, she said. Maybe we'll send the girls to a movie, and we'll stay home and play, she added, running her hand down my leg. I felt a familiar thrill. I think you're onto something, I said, running my hand down her smooth leg. The girls were excited about our date, and I had to admit that I was feeling pretty good about it too, enjoying the time with Rhonda. I'm not sure anything long-term will come of this, but I'm willing to take the risk. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So, subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.